Welcome everyone, this is Coaching in Session. My name is Michael Rearden and I will be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about the difference between matriarchal and patriarchal. This is going to be more focused on what society is because again, you can be a patriarch type of society, matriarch type of society, but also in mindset. Because if you think about the mindset behind the two, one, the man is going to be forefront in power, and then the other one is going to have the woman in power. But yet there's a way to think of it in a traditional sense, a traditional value. But then there's going to be a way to see it in a modern world, in a modern light. And depending on how you view it, you're going to have a different mindset. You're going to have a different conclusion to which one is better, to which one you should be living, and to probably what other people should be doing. Because for some reason, people have the opinion that other people should be thinking, living, doing exactly what they believe. But we do have to understand that there are going to be people with differences. We are not going to 100% agree with people. And there's nothing wrong with having a disagreement. There is nothing wrong with two different people having different lives. For example, we talked about it on the episode, How to Enhance Your Partner. You can be a stay-at-home mom. You could be a husband that goes out and protects and provides for your family. Cool. It's just a different way of living. Yet there could be people saying, oh, I can never be a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home wife. That's so boring. Oh, that job is not fulfilling. It's just different mindsets. It's just different ways of life. So depending on where you are right now, I know a lot of the younger generations, they're in the mindset of living life to the fullest, not being tied down so much, not being that stay-at-home wife or that husband that just goes out and provides. Everyone's all about having fun. Right? Family is kind of taking the back burner. And we can see that because not many people are having kids. People are just putting off to having children later. They're focused on career. They're focused on self first. However, when we look at these different types of societies, we can see that there is even a difference in that. When you have kids, how you have kids, who's taking care of the kids. Again, there is a different type of mindset in different types of societies. That's why some people say, I love watching American TV because we have a different type of humor. We have a different type of society. And another society can look at our society and say, that is so weird. Like, I will never do that. It's because they were influenced into that. So today we're going to be looking at the blog, trying to understand the difference between matriarchy and patriarchy, and then really understanding if it's something that we should be giving attention to. All right, everyone, if you're new to the channel, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and to share the video and or audio to help build a community of like-minded individuals. And today we're going to be talking about the matriarchal versus patriarchal type mindset in society, and then even in relationships, because when we look at patriarchy, we can start there. We look at the patriarchy, it's going to be led by the man. The man is going to be forefront in the relationship. Typically, this is where you say that the man is the breadwinner. The woman is going to stay at home, take care of the kids, take care of the house, cook, clean, do all of those things. But the issue with this is today in our world, this is considered misogynist or is considered toxic, right? Because men are leading. Now, when we put in feminism into the mix, typically, people are not really against feminism. I mean, I don't think feminism is necessarily a good thing. I believe women empowerment is a better option than feminism. The matriarchal mindset is more in line with making sure that the woman is going to be in a centralized position of power. Think of the queen, think of positions of power in government. This right here is the matriarchal type of mindset. However, there is another aspect to the patriarch and the matriarch type mindset when it comes to the family unit. For example, a father in the family can keep discipline, can make sure respect is divvied up, where everyone's following in line, right? Everyone's doing what they need to do. The family is safe. The family is secure. This is something that people don't realize. It just naturally happens. The issue with stepping away from the patriarchy type mindset is that now the man is not so much of the leader, that beacon of safety and security and respect. And so sometimes it can cause other issues to occur. Predators can see this as a weakness, so they attack these type of families. We can look at how kids are raised and how they are going to be more pronounced in how they live life. Are they rebellious? Do they misbehave? It can be an issue for families that are not going to have that strong father figure. But then we just can't say that a society that has a matriarchy, all the kids are bad, because that is not the case either. It's just that they learn different. They adapt to the culture. If you take a kid who was growing up in a patriarchy and you put them in a matriarchy when they're 16, I think there's going to be some issues, because now the kid is saying, oh, like there's no dad in the picture, right? This is where a lot of single parents, especially here in America, they have a lot of issues because there is no father figure. Then we look at the matriarchal aspect. The matriarchal aspect is talking about how we can get women in power. Again, women are going to be that beacon right there. But then if we look at it in families, this is something that I have experienced in my family. The moment you lose the matriarch of the family, right, the person who's just the glue to everything, the family dissipates a lot quicker than if the man is not in the picture. And we're going to be talking about that in just a moment. It's going to be story time. And then we compare different cultures, okay? So American culture versus maybe Latin culture. For example, I'm sure you probably heard passport bros or something, where they'll go out because they're looking for a marriage or looking for a more feminine type woman. Especially here in the West, American men will go out to different countries to get different women because they're more feminine. They're more in tune to the patriarchy type of mindset. They want the man to be in power. Versus here in America, we're shifting from the patriarchy to the matriarchy, where more women want to be career focused, more women want to be in power. And again, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be in power or to have a type of mindset, but understand there are going to be certain living circumstances and adjustments that you have to understand are going to happen. If you want to be a masculine woman, there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to understand you have to get a feminized man, because if you don't get that, the relationship is going to have some issues later on, because having two masculines is not a good thing. Can it work? It works sometimes, right? But the majority of the time, it doesn't, right? Sadly, that's just not the case. But yet these masculine women, these women who are super career focused, they eventually want a masculine male frame who makes more than them or might be equal to them, who maybe has a good body, a good lifestyle, right? They don't want to downgrade. They don't want to date down. Most women don't date down. Most women date up. In a matriarchy, we do have to look at, well, I'm trying to get the best candidate for myself. Typically, queens don't marry peasants. Queens are going to marry other royalty, right? If you're a prince, if you're from an established family, that's typically what it is. Queens don't marry peasants. However, a king can marry a peasant, and a king can make that peasant a queen. Very different type of mindsets, very different in different types of culture. There is a difference between American culture and Latin culture as the example. I go into detail here, and I'm going to be talking about this. I don't talk about it in the blog article, but I am going to be talking about it on the podcast, about how that culture can really make a family unit thrive. Because there are going to be benefits to having a patriarchy, and there are going to be benefits to having a matriarchy. And you do maybe have to conjoin them, compare them, use them interchangeably, but there should always be one that's forefront. Think of it as if you're in the army, you have your primary rifle and you have your sidearm. Your sidearm is typically not going to be what you're going to just fight an enemy that's 100 yards away with. You're probably going to use your sidearm when you get in a close quarter combat, or you're probably going to use it when you run out of ammunition for your main battle rifle, right? Your primary firearm. Guess what? This is that, right? So you can have your forefront, you can have your support, you can say that this can be something that I can move into, I can adjust to, but I will say that these two types of societies can be very different, but yet they can work together also. So this idea to write this blog and to have this podcast episode came about because when I'm looking at society and I'm working with people from different cultures and different lives, I have to be very aware of different circumstances, because if I'm not, I'm just going to have what I see as correct. And I'm going to have to look at their life objectively and say, you know what you're doing is probably not a good idea. because I have adjusted to this type of lifestyle. Because let's say I'm a gambler, and if I'm gambling all my money away, and let's say I finally hit the jackpot, right? Now I'm living large, I'm living good. Should I advocate for people to go out and gamble all their money? Probably not. It's probably not a good thing. It's the same thing with like certain types of drugs and alcohol. Some people say that, oh, the alcohol makes me feel better, the drugs make me feel better, but it actually destroys your life, right? The person who's doing it can't necessarily see it quite yet. But then a person who's on the outside can say, hey, this is hurting you. This is not helping you. But then that person is going to fight back and say, hey, you don't know. You don't care. You don't want me to be happy, right? So now they're arguing to the fact that the drugs and alcohol are beneficial to them, when in reality, that is not the case. It is destructive. So in a sense, society can have those destruction type mindsets and beliefs already intertwined in it. Because if you have, for example, the patriarchy, the man is forefront and the man's the leader of the household, that right there, the woman is going to be that submissive, stay-at-home wife. Again, this is the patriarchy. But it doesn't mean that the woman doesn't have any power in the patriarchy. This is where we go so far left and so far right when it comes to society. It's just like, oh, a man is leading. Oh, like this right here is misogyny. Oh, this right here is talking about aspects that I don't want to hear about because I should have power. We understand that you have power, but it's nothing wrong with having someone be the leader. Sometimes when I do coaching for individuals, I often give them the leadership position. I say, hey, you're the leader today. All right, you're going to lead this session. And they're like, huh? Because they don't know how to be leaders. And in a leadership position, sometimes you have to learn from leaders, but then sometimes you have to be the leader to learn what true leadership is. Because to be honest, when you are single and then you find somebody and maybe you want to marry that somebody, when you marry that somebody, that's the first time you are ever a wife or you are ever a husband. Now, you can look at your parents' situation and maybe it was a good situation, right? Maybe it was a bad situation. What do you do with that? Perception is going to be the key in all of this, because you can say we had a good relationship or my parents had a good relationship. Perception is this is really good for me. However, maybe your partner had a bad situation with the husband being the leader. Guess what? Dad wasn't really the best dad for me. And then guess what happened? Now we are faced with a situation. And the situation is I am trying to be the best person I can be. Which type of mentality, which type of society should I be going toward? Because she has experience with a bad father and the mom has experience with a bad husband, but it doesn't necessarily define what your relationship is going to be, because you can say, oh, it didn't work for them. It could work for me. Very possible. But in society, typically what people do is, oh, this didn't work. Let me jump ship. Let me go to the other one. So if the patriarchy is not working, the man is leading, guess what's going to happen? Most people are going to go to the matriarch type mindset where the woman's going to be centralized and the woman's going to lead. But yet they find that that is not where their happiness was. So if it's broke, don't bother fixing it, they would say. But what I'm telling you is, if it's broke, I want you to take a second look at it and see if it can be fixed. I'm not saying that you should be fixers and you should just go into relationships and start fixing up everything. This is not what I'm saying. What I am saying is there's going to be different aspects to different positions. The story that I want to tell you is about my great-grandmother. Now, my great-grandmother, very quiet, very religious. She would just always be there praying, and that was her. She was loving, caring. She was married. When her husband passed away, my great-grandfather, everyone knew him, right? Everyone respected him. This was a very patriarchal type of family unit where she was there for him. Whatever he needed, she was there for him. And everyone knew not to mess with him. The daughters, sons, whatever, knew, okay, dad means business. But then mom was just there, right? Support, enhancing the man. But guess what? When he passed away, did she take a position of power? She did not. She was just still there as that beacon for what a woman should be in that sense of the patriarchal type of mindset. But something amazing happened. She became the matriarch to the family. So the matriarch to the family is the woman that is the centralized unit that keeps everyone together, right? Everyone revolves around this person. If you need to see the family, you see her. The family's there. The family's always going over to see her. Family's always going over there to talk to her. Everyone is visiting her, right? She's the central unit, the central hub. If you ever go on a bus, for example, in the city, the bus goes maybe around and eventually goes back to the bus station. Maybe it needs gas, but maybe that is where the people go to get a different bus to a different town, to a different city, to a different region, wherever it be. But what I will say is that even though the bus goes back to the hub most of the time, the bus is always going to be going the same route again. In the sense of society, in the sense of the ebb and flow of the world, history repeats itself. So if we have a society that is, let's say, purely patriarchal, we can see the ebb and flow of how the society moves through history. Same thing with the matriarchal type of society. We can look at the comparison between the two and how they're very different. But we can look at how they can join together, because I think that's where they truly shine. Because if I just simply say, you need to have a patriarchal type of mindset, right? The man is going to lead, the woman's going to stay at home, take care of the kids, do all the stuff for the house, support the man, enhance the man. Cool, right? You might not be in that mindset, but then you might not even be in a matriarchal type of mindset where you might be a woman of power. You want power, but you want to find someone who's equal or better than you. It's very possible that you can, but again, that's going to be the minority of people, because then most women are going to want men that are higher status. And if we look at the percent of that, 5%, maybe 10% of men are going to fill most of the aspects of what women want. So we have 100% of women wanting to go after 10% of the men. Either sharing has to happen, or women are going to have to settle to something else. And again, I understand that it's going to be triggering to a lot of people, but it is the aspect to choosing what type of society and what type of mindset you want. Now, what I have noticed in my coaching in my life is that the women who go for the matriarchal type of mindset early on, right from the jump, from their 18, 19, 20 years old, they always tend to go back to wanting the patriarch type of lifestyle. It doesn't mean they want to give up their independence. It means that they want a man to lead. They want the man to be in the front, because most women naturally and instinctually want the man to lead. Is this the case for everybody? No, this is not the case for everybody, but it is the case for the majority. And most of the time we have to look at what the majority is thinking, what the majority type mindset is, because then we can get a good understanding of where we should be, how we should be moving, what we should be doing. The issue is that we do have to understand, as I said in the story, it wasn't truly until the father had passed away where people started to gravitate toward her so readily. Maybe it was because, she's alone and we have to make sure she's taken care of, but her spirit, her energy was just something that you just fell in love with. Once that family unit was gone and she passed away, you can see the family started to kind of dissipate, right? The glue that was her started to separate the family, right? I moved away. My sister had already moved away. It was a very interesting situation, because now the family that was once so close-knit was now loosely wound together. Still family, but very different. And I'm sure there's many people who can attest that once they lost that matriarch type of woman in their family, think of like when you have like your Italian families, if you have like a matriarch type of grandmother or mother, and when she passed away, it's kind of like the family's kind of like lost unless there's a new person that kind of comes into power. And sometimes that can happen, but most of the time it's like, okay, cool, everyone kind of goes down their own path, and then the next generation develops a new matriarch type of woman. The issue with the separation and the cohesiveness of these societies and family units is that they truly don't understand what role a person should be doing. And this is where we get into gender roles and why people are so upset about them. Because if I have to cook and I have to clean, I probably am not going to be upset, right? I'm not going to be like, oh, wait, you just want me to cook and clean? Okay, cool. But again, you get to decide what type of mindset. You get to decide what type of family unit you want to create. You get to decide who you want to marry. And that is why you have to look at your mindset when it comes to what you want short term and long term. If you are the person who maybe just wants something short term, right? You want to be the leader, but then you don't want to be the leader later on. This happens with a lot of women because they are leaders right now, but they don't want to be leaders in the relationship. Sometimes they can mix it. I have seen it work, but I have seen it not work more often. And you just have to decide, right? What type of leader are you going to be? Can you shift roles very quickly? Women do a better job at shifting between tasks. Men should be more focused on like one thing at once. Women can kind of do multiple things at once. It could be an evolution thing, taking care of the kids, taking care of the house, the husband. That right there can just have hardwired them to think different, to act different. But men should have more focus. And if they don't, what I have found is that they're just not going to be at 100%. So a woman can, if she wants to, work and then come home and be that person. But what I will say is that even though she worked, she understood her role. She would cook, she would clean. There was not a day that we did not have food. There was not a day that the house wasn't clean. The house was immaculate. That was what I grew up in. This was the standard for me. So when we have our family, our home, the house is clean, right? There's food in the fridge. There's food being cooked. And it's not because of I'm telling her what to do. This just becomes the standard for the family. The bills are paid. This becomes the standard for the family. I am leading. It becomes the standard for the family. I protect, I provide. It becomes the standard for the family. She's the glue. It becomes the standard for the family. We are creating that. And there's going to come a time when I'm no longer here that everyone's going to be around my wife because she becomes that matriarch type of person for the family. She becomes the glue that brings everyone together. She brings the kids, she brings the grandkids, and everyone understands that this is a good person. And then everyone else in the community and the society is going to also see that they gravitate naturally toward her. Not because she wanted to be a boss babe, not because she wanted to be a career-driven woman, but because she wanted to have a family. But because she wanted to be the best mom, the best wife possible. And that right there is going to create that matriarch type of unit that's going to work with the patriarch type of unit. Because again, you can have a patriarch type mindset and you could say the man should lead, the man is going to do everything, the woman should stay at home and just cook and clean, and that's her life and take care of the kids. Okay, cool. You can go with that traditional way, but in our world today, we do have too many modern modifications. And those modern modifications are going to mess with mindset very quickly. The way I like to think of it as if you become addicted to a substance like sugar. For some reason, you're going to start craving that sugar. And if you get a sense of freedom, you're going to start to crave that freedom. Now, you can maybe one day get a sense of perception. Oh, I'm thinking about what happened. Oh, I'm thinking about doing this. It wasn't really that great. I learned from my mistake. I learned from my lessons from living life. If you are that type of person, most people just kind of go with the flow and they find themselves either unhappy, unsatisfied, or unfulfilled, or maybe all of the three, because we are trying to go down a path that is against our natural tendencies. But just because you grew up in a society doesn't mean that you can't change it. It's just that it's going to be more difficult on the mindset because it's like, all right, I'm going to take this car and I'm going to make it a helicopter. Very different wiring. And in our mindset, when we take someone from a patriarchy and we're putting them in a matriarchy, it's a very different type of society. I know people who, when they move from one place to another, and I'm not talking about in like your same country, I'm talking about different countries with different type of societal foundations. You're going to find that the men here are real different or the women here are really different. and you might not like it, but that is what is the social norm. And it's the same thing with garb, type of clothes you wear. If you're wearing a certain type of clothes, you might say, these clothes are weird. If you go to that region, that country, you're going to say, well, I don't want to wear it because it just seems weird, but yet everyone else is wearing it. And since you're wearing your clothes you feel comfortable in, guess what happens? Everyone thinks you're weird. You're the outcast. So in a sense, if we don't pick the right one, we become outcasts. If we do pick the ones that resonate with us the most, it can be going against what society is moving toward. But I will say we do want to move toward what we feel the best versus what society is telling us to do. So in this article, the matriarchal versus patriarchal type of society mindset, societal structures, we do have to look at the patriarchy is going to be, again, placing men at the forefront of social, political, and economic hierarchies. The matriarchal societies are going to be focusing on the woman being the central place of governance, decision-making, and community structures. Now, we can compare different cultures, as I said, and we can find that maybe you like Latin culture more, you like European culture more, or maybe you like American culture. But what I will say is that there are going to be different cultures, there's going to be different societal structures, and you get to decide which one is for you. So there might be pros and cons to the different types of societal structures. You might say that if I'm in a patriarchy, I'm the leader and I don't have to worry about being bossed around. Or vice versa. You might say I'm part of the matriarchy and I don't have to be bossed around by a man. So you get to decide what type of mindset you want, what type of lifestyle you want, but understand that you shouldn't just be switching every day, right? I'm going to switch this up. I'm going to do this one day and I'm going to do this one year. You should focus almost a lifetime on this is the type of lifestyle that I want. Think of mindset, right? Mindsets are going to be changing every couple of years. But when we look at what we want for our family, we can't be switching that up too often. The reason being, we can learn from our mistakes and make some modifications, but we just can't say, all right, everyone, we're turning around all the time. When you put a family into it, there's a lot more moving pieces, and eventually, not everyone's going to be on board. It's easy to get everyone in the car initially and say, we're driving to this location. But eventually, if you're in this car and then you switch cars and they switch cars, eventually you're going to end up leaving someone behind. And if you are going to be doing all of that switcheroo stuff, you do have to give yourself a foundation of what you want, essentially, and then try to keep it as much in line to those switches. Because if you're going to switch from patriarchy to matriarchy and vice versa and keep going back and forth, each person is not going to know what they need to do. Have you ever had a job where people just didn't know what to do? Hopefully not. But there are people who just kind of go in the job. It's like, yeah, I just got hired yesterday. I don't know what to do. Yeah, they can learn. But let's say I took that same person who learned, did all that work to learn, and then I gave them a new job. Now they have to learn that job by themselves again. So they're always in a place of learning. That can be a good thing. But it can also be a thing that is going to be a hindrance to your full potential. If you're always trying to do something, you're always trying to learn, how can you grow? And it's the same or very similar to businesses. If you are in one business, let's say you're in the food industry, you might say, oh, I'm in the food industry. And then now you want to go into the grocery store industry. Okay, you need to know different things. Yes, there's going to be things that are the same, but most likely there are going to be things that are very different. So you get to decide. If the things that are going to be the same are going to be helpful, keep them. But if they're going to be different, you have to adjust. In a sense, our matriarchal versus our patriarchal type mindsets and societies, we are going to have a more difficult time adjusting if we want to keep switching between the two. But from experience, this is what I have found to be the case. And you just have to understand what you're looking for in life, right? Like I said, you can have your type of mindset, you can have your type of society, you can have your type of culture. When you bring it in with the right people, you get something good, you get magic, you get what works, right? What feels right. And if you are in a relationship that feels wrong, you're going to know it. You're going to say, this is not necessarily the best relationship for me. I don't want to be second place. I want to be first place, maybe, right? If you can't take that role of a follower in a relationship, or understand that sometimes they're going to lead, sometimes they're going to follow, right? Depending on it, there is a push and pull to relationships. There's a push and pull to society. And if you want to have just a sole traditional view on it, where you're always the leader in one regard, that's fine. But then understanding you're doing it in a very modernized world. So what I will say is there are going to be huge differences. You're going to gravitate toward one. There's always going to be modern flares adjusted to your society in our current world today. But what you need to be focusing on is the underlying tone of what you want today, tomorrow, and in the future, because your family unit is going to be created by this decision. Are you going to choose a patriarchal type or a matriarchal type? You can try to mix the two, but there's always going to be a leading factor. Whichever factor that is, make sure you understand it. If you need help, head over to RevenConcepts.com. We'll be more than happy to talk about your type of mindset, what type of family unit and societal unit you should be going toward, and if it's going to be beneficial for your long-term goals. Because if you want to have a family, if you want to maybe retire at a certain age, if you want to have your grandkids come see you, or if you want to go travel the world, all of those are going to be different types of mindsets and societies. You have to figure out what you want to do, not only today, but tomorrow. My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach. If you have any questions, email me coachinginsession@gmail.com. And I'll see everyone on the next episode of Coaching in Session. Until then, everyone take care.